different atmosphere when you get into a business setting as far as sports go. So my agent, he set me up to go play in that situation. It was important for me to go there and learn about what it's like to be a pro and how hard it is. And we ended up going into the playoffs, and I wasn't playing. I was getting healthy scratch in the playoffs. And they had a good team, and of course they had been winning. And they signed guys for depth, but they didn't need me in the playoffs. So I was skating, training, working out, everything every day with the team, not playing at all. And I remember kind of being a little bit miserable while I was there because these are my final months of college that I was missing. That April, May of college where all my friends were back at school, doing whatever they're doing, having fun.
Right.
And I was in Hartford, Connecticut, going on bus trips, trying to get in the lineup for the American League hockey.
Right.
And I learned a lot about how much of a business it is at that time. So it was an important couple months for me. So then the lockout was coming. My agent, I think, give him a lot of credit. I really had a great relationship with him, and it was really important for me to come over to Europe at that time so I ended up signing in Jokerit while I was still in Connecticut on that tryout agreement.
Okay.
I was still in talks with the Rangers about if they wanted to offer me a two-way NHL contract, like one of those standard coming out of college contracts.
Mm-hmm.
And we were still in discussions, and they basically said, look, we're not sure if they're going to offer you, but this Jokerit team is going to offer you, and it's an amazing situation for you. And I think that 3-4 years from now, you're going to look back and say, having gone there could be the best decision you've ever made. And, it's exactly worked out that way. It really couldn't have worked out any better for me. If I had waited at all to sign that contract, the lockout would have been announced, and then an influx of players going to Europe probably would have taken my spot away. When I went to Europe, went to Finland at first, like I had already told you, I was playing with some absolute world-class NHL players, able to learn from them on and off the ice, and it was just huge for me. And then in comparing the three leagues, it's obviously everybody wants to try to rank the leagues in the world. I think the only two that you could say definitively is the NHL is by far and away the best league in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I think anybody else will tell you the KHL is the second best league because of the players that it has. You have Ilya Kovalchuk, Alexander Radulov, all of these superstars that would be stars in the NHL, but they're making so much money over here. So there's that group of players that really take the league to the next step, say the American Hockey League. And then you look at the AHL, or I look at the AHL, the Finnish league, the Swedish league, Swiss A, the league in Switzerland, the top league in Switzerland. All four of those are pretty comparable. There's a lot of skills in all those leagues. The Finnish league is characterized by, it's got a lot of younger players, but they're working incredibly hard, very defensive,
Really?
very difficult to get scoring chances. Very, very. People think of Europe that it's really offensive. It's completely much different than that. Finland and Sweden are so difficult to get scoring chances. The teams don't forecheck that hard. It's mostly trap, a lot of trapping. And it's very, very difficult to produce points in that league. The American League obviously has tons of young talent, tons of really, really good players that will eventually play in the NHL. But then the competition is hindered, I think, because the teams are changing daily.
Right.
You get your top player called up, then you get a player sent up from the East Coast League, and then three guys come down from the NHL, and so the lines change daily. And it's so much. It's based. The American League is a development league, so they're not looking for necessarily playing the best players right now. If they say they have a first-round draft pick on their team, their coach is being told by the GM that guy is playing 20 minutes a
I see.
So you end up in a situation where you're a little bit in the American League. I mean, you're a little bit out of control how much you play, like because the coaches and the GMs are using the American Hockey League to develop their young talent.
Is it your sense that the movement between the NHL and the AHL is even more so now than it was before the lockout? There's a lot more.
It is because with the hard salary cap, teams are up against it money-wise.
Mm-hmm.
So they have to always play with the cap in order to keep underneath it.
Mm-hmm.
They send a guy down. They have to call somebody up that's going to be willing for the price, right? If somebody gets injured, they can't go sign a new player because they're too expensive. They can't trade for a guy who's going to put them over the cap. They have to call up a player.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of movement, and it's
nice.
As a professional hockey player, interview Bob Butler and ask him about it. It's very difficult, very tough to. He's found himself in the American League. It doesn't matter that he's playing really well and scoring points. He's not getting called up because they're calling up young players, guys they're trying to develop. So it's a really tough situation to put yourself into and get into. So
even though it's a development league, there are a lot of factors that sort of hinder an individual's development. I mean, sometimes you're playing with different guys every night. It's not so much about the teamwork and winning the game as it is individual development. So
for sure. You're more, as an American League hockey player, you're more concerned about beating out your line mate for a job in the NHL than you are about winning the game that night.
Well said.
That's the truth of the matter. And when you get to these top leagues in Europe, you're already at the top of the chain. So those teams play the games to win it because there's nowhere else to go from there. Like you can't get called up from the Finnish league there's no higher league, you know.
That must be a lot more fun, I would think, than playing in the AHL.
Yeah. So you have that team chemistry, and I think I'll touch base. I'll touch on that in another question. But I think that should answer the differences in the leagues, the levels of play. I think the AHL, in short, I think the AHL, the Finnish league, and the Swedish league are very close in the level of play.
Okay, but very, very different.
I think the KHL is a step above that, and a step above that is the NHL. That's kind of how and a lot of people would look at it. Last Sunday, your starting lineup for the KHL All-Star game. Yeah, that was one of the highlights of my hockey career. I played on the line with Ilya Kovalchuk, and
pretty special.
I mean, he's a guy that when I was growing up, he was a superstar in the NHL, and if you look back at his numbers in the NHL, I think he had over a point a game, almost half a goal a game. He's a guy that would have been a Hall of Famer if he would stay. He's only 31 years old. He's still in the prime of his career, and he's chosen to play in St. Petersburg for this Russian team, SKA St. Petersburg, and he makes just an absurd amount of money. I think it's something like $12.5 million after taxes.
Wow.
It's double what he would make in the NHL. So that's his choice to play there. I don't think I would make that choice, but playing with him and being able to meet him, and I think both goals I scored, he assisted on, and then
is that right?
I assisted on two or three of his goals. Obviously, it's an all-star game, so the pace is slow. It's just kind of fun, but
yeah, you were both going for 20 goals per team, right?
Yeah.
What was the final score? 18-16 or something?
Yeah, 18-16. It was no defense, absolutely just for fun. But being able to play with him and some of the other guys on our team on the west side, we had Matt Gilroy was on the team, Baker winner from BU.
Yeah.